All right, so today we are going to read pages 28 to 32 in Of Mice and Men. And also, what I want people to do is I want people to be able to answer slide not 9, but 11. So, as we're reading 28 to 32 today, I really want you to focus upon what George says to Lenny about Curly's wife and put your answer there. And then answer the multiple choice question. How was Lenny's attitude about Curly's wife portrayed in the text? What we all know already is from chapter 1 that Lenny he scared a woman and they ran out of weed, and that Lenny doesn't really know his own strength. We also know that giving someone the eye means that they look at other people. They might even be attracted to other people or just want their attention. And we know that Curly's wife gives a lot of the men who work at the ranch the eye. All right. So we also left off with the old swamper, Candy, telling Lenny that Curly's wife gives Slim the eye. And also, he says that, well, I think Curly's married. She's a tart. He ain't the first, said George. There's plenty done that. The old man moved toward the door, and his ancient dog lifted his head and peered out, and then got painfully to his feet to follow. I gotta be setting out in the wash basins for the guys. The teams will be in before long. You guys gonna buck barley? Yeah. You won't tell Curly nothing I said. He's a little bit nervous because if Curly hears that he's been saying bad things about him or his wife, he might be let go. Hell no. Why, you look her over, mister. You ain't seen if she's a tart. He stepped out of the door into the brilliant sunshine. George laid down his cards thoughtfully, turned his piles of 3. He built 4 clubs on his ace pile. The sun square was on the floor now, and the flies whipped through it like sparks. A sound of jiggling harnesses and a croak of heavy-laden axles sounded from outside. From the distance came a clear call. Stable Buck! Oh, Stable Buck! George stared at his solitaire lay, and he flounced the cards together and turned them around to Lenny. Lenny was lying down on the bunk, watching him. Look, Lenny, this here ain't no setup. I'm scared. You're gonna have trouble with that Curly guy. I seen that kind before. He was feeling you out. He figures he got you scared, and he's gonna take a sock at you first chance he gets. Lenny's eyes were frightened. I don't want no trouble, he said plaintively. Don't let him sock me, George. George got up and went over to Lenny's bunk and sat down on it. I hate that kind of bastard, he said. I've seen plenty of 'em. Like the old guys, Curly don't take no chances, and he always wins. He thought for a moment. If he tangles with you, Lenny, we're gonna do what we can. Don't make no mistake about that. He's the boss's son. Look, Lenny, you try to get away from him, will you? Don't ever speak to him, and if he comes in here, you move clear to the other side of the room. Will you do that, Lenny? I don't want no trouble, Lenny mourned. I never done nothing to him. Well, that won't do you no good if Curly wants to plug himself up for a fighter. You just don't have nothing to do with him. Will you remember? Sure, George. I ain't gonna say a word. The sound of the approaching grade teams was louder. Thud of big hooves on hard ground, drag of brakes, and the jingling and trace of chains. Men were calling back and forth from the teams. George, sitting on the bunk beside Letty, frowned as he thought Lenny asked timidly, You ain't mad, George? I'm mad at you. I'm mad here at this Curly bastard. I hope he was going to get a little stake together, maybe $100. His tone grew decisive. You keep away from Curly, Lenny. Sure I will, George. I won't say a word. Don't let him pull you in. But if the bastard stalks you, you let him have it. Let him have what, George? Never mind, never mind. I'll tell you when. I hate that kind of guy. Look, Lenny, if you get in any trouble, you remember what I told you to do? Lenny raised up on his elbow, and his face contorted with thought. His eyes moved sadly to George's face. If I get in trouble, you ain't gonna let me tend the rabbits. That's not what I meant. You remember where we slept last night, down by the river? Yeah, I remember. Sure, I remember. I go there and I hide in the brush. Hide till I come from you. Don't let anybody see you. Hide in the brush by the river. Say that over. Hide in the brush by the river. Down in the brush by the river. You get in trouble. If I get in trouble. A brake screeched outside. A call came. Stable Buck. Oh, Stable Buck. George said, say it to yourself, Lenny, so you won't forget it. Both men glanced up, for the rectangle of sunshine in the doorway was cut off. A girl was standing there looking in. She had full rouged lips and wide-spaced eyes, heavily made up. Her fingernails were red. Her hair hung in little roller clusters like sausages. She wore a cotton house dress, and red mules on the instep were little bouquets of red ostrich feathers. I'm looking for Curly, she said. Her voice had a nasal, brittle quality. George looked away from her and then back. He was in here a minute ago, but he went. Oh, she put her hands behind her back and leaned against the door frame so that her body was thrown forward. You the new fellas that just come, ain't you? Yeah. Lenny's eyes moved down over her body, and though she did not seem to be looking at Lenny, she bridled a little. She looked at her fingernails. Sometimes Curly's in here, she explained. George said briskly, well, he ain't now. If he ain't, I guess I better look someplace else, she said playfully. Lenny watched her, fascinated. George said, well, if I see him, I'll pass the word he was looking for him. She smiled archly and twitched her body. Nobody can blame a person for looking, she said. There were footsteps behind her going by. She turned her head. Hi, Slim, she said. Slim's voice came through the door. Hey, good looking. I'm trying to find Curly, Slim. I ain't trying very hard. I seen him going in your house. She was suddenly apprehensive. Bye, boys, she called into the bunkhouse and hurried away. George looked around at Lenny. Jesus, what a tramp, he said. So that's what Curly picks for a wife? She's pretty, said Lenny defensively. Yeah, but she sure ain't hiding it. Curly's got his work out for him. She'd be clear out for $20. Lenny still stared at the doorway where she had been. Gosh, she was pretty. He smiled admiringly. George quickly looked down at him, and then he took him by the ear and he shook him. Listen to me, you crazy bastard, he said fearfully. Don't you ever take a look at that tramp. I don't care what she says or what she does. I've seen him poison before, but I ain't never seen no piece of jailbait worth than her. You leave her be. Lenny tried to disengage his ear. I ain't never done nothing, George. No, you never. But when she was standing in the doorway, showing her legs, you ain't looking the other way either. I never meant no harm, George. Honest, I never. Well, you keep away from her, 'cause she's a rat trap, And if I've ever seen one, you let Curly take the rap and let him in himself for it." Lenny cried out suddenly, "I don't like this place, George. This ain't no good place. I want to get out of here." "Well, we gotta keep it till we get a stake. We can't help it, Lenny." "Well, we'll just get out as soon as we can. I don't like it no better than you do." He went back to the table and set out a new solitaire hand. "Nope, I don't like it," he said. "For 2 bits I'd shove out of here, and if we can just get a few dollars and a poke, we'll shove off and go up river and pan gold. We can make maybe a couple dollars a day there, and we might hit a pocket." Lenny eagerly leaned toward him. "Let's go, George. Let's get out of here. It's mean here." "We gotta stay," George said shortly. "Shut up now. The guys will be coming in." All right. So that was what we were to read for today. And if you go to slide 11, it says, "Give me a summary of today's reading. Focus on what George says to Lenny about Curly's wife." Restate the question. Tell what he said to George. Give a little piece evidence, and then explain why that's important.